Welcome, everybody. We got a full house tonight, so give us about 1 minute. Let your buddies get settled in, signed in here, and then we'll do some quick intros and get it cooking. Peggy, Massachusetts folks tonight. I don't know if you have what it takes to keep up with us.
I'm a Jersey girl. I got it. I'm good.
All right, we won't worry about you. The boss was just in town, actually.
Yeah.
Monday.
Hopefully some of you guys saw Springsteen because it was an amazing show. We saw him out here in Seattle.
Yeah, as we're letting folks get rolled in, we got a lot to cover tonight, so I don't want to take too long with housekeeping stuff and delaying. And this is important stuff, right? I think presumably for most of you, you're going through this the first time or kind of at the beginning. We're speaking primarily to class 2024 parents, right? Juniors that are getting ready to, it's almost game time, right? The Wolves officially at the door here. But if you could just, and I'll make sure that I have chat enabled, that most of tonight, we're going to have you put all your questions, and we love questions. So please try to stump us here. We'll be impressed if you're able to do that. But just throw in the chat, what's the class of the graduating student, right? Or for your student, what class are you graduating here? So right off the bat, we had a couple overachievers, class 2025. But yeah, let us know what class couple 25s here. Good. Couple twins for you, Peggy. Your sweet spot.
Nice.
And they're done that. Peg's the trailblazer here. She knows what to do. Class of 24 help. Class of 23, obviously we're at the finish line here. So I think maybe we'll still have some tidbits that you can benefit from. But again, I think a lot of this is we're talking to 24 and underclassmen. So again, I quickly alluded to moving forward from a housekeeping standpoint. Please put your questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. That's where one of us are going to be living, banging away on there. We'll do our very best to answer as many questions as possible. It's not possible to hit everyone with a crowd like this, but we'll make sure we're not going to leave you hanging, right? We'll make sure we'll leave tonight, making sure that you guys understand where to go after tonight to get your questions answered. And if you need specific, more one-on-one FaceTime, we got solutions for that. We're going to leave you in good hands. I promise. This is being recorded, right? Everybody's going to get this recording that registered. If you got to dip early or just half listen here, you'll get the recording tomorrow. You'll get the slide deck tomorrow, so no worries there. And any of your buddies that couldn't make it, we'll make sure that we follow up with them as well. And if, again, you have friends or neighbors that would benefit, feel free to share it. But yeah, keep the questions coming. Like I said at the top, I'm a Mass boy. I grew up on the North Shore in Ipswich, Mass, birthplace of American independence, home of Cranes Beach. For those of you that have been fortunate enough to been to one, it's a beautiful town, Peggy. Where do you see this place? Beautiful town. Little slice of paradise. I live in Beverly right now. We have a little office in Salem. I've been doing this my entire career, right? I went after Ipswich High School. I went on to Stonehill College and just fell on my face along with my parents and my siblings during that process. And my personal experience was part of the genesis of starting a company back in 2005, right? Coming up on 20 years ago, that just focused on helping parents navigate this process and hopefully avoid making the same mistakes that I made and so many other families make. And it's easy to make mistakes in this process. And here we are almost 20 years later, new coat of paint, College Aid Pro, and a bigger team, a much better team. And I'm just really grateful to be working with who I think are the utmost professionals that you can find in the country. And I spend a lot of my career trying to find the best folks in the country that operate in this little niche world that we operate in every day. And you're looking at the top of the food chain on the screen here across from me. That's Peggy Keogh, the fairy godmother of financial aid herself. I had to go all the way to Seattle to track her down and court her and eventually convince her to come over with us full time every day. And I'm very lucky. We're very lucky as a team to have her. And you guys are going to see why over the next hour here. So Peggy, if you want to say a hi, we'll get it cooking after that.
Yeah. My background is in the financial industry. And so, as I said, I have twins, and there's a lot of people with twins, which is awesome. And basically, when my kids hit high school, I did this deep dive. How does this whole thing work? Not saving, but how does this whole thing work? And I realized very quickly that it was very complex and stressful, as a lot of you guys, I'm sure, are in the middle of this, or you're at the beginning of this. And so being a planner, a financial planner, financial advisor at the time, I thought, you know what? I can focus just on this and impact families even more. And so that's what I did. And so I started my own business back in 2014, did this for a while, and then met the guys at CAP early on, beta tested the software, and then ended up joining the team, as Matt said, in 2021. It's been awesome having a team of like-minded people. And really, this is what gets us out of bed in the morning, is helping you guys, teaching you guys so that you're educated, taking the stress out of the process. Because trust me, it doesn't have to be as stressful as it is for a lot of families. So that's our goal here. So let me share my screen here. And really, this is our mission at College Aid Pro. And really, the way we do this is by educating you guys so you're informed consumers in this process. And as I just said, takes away the stress and helps you set expectations for your kids around affordability, which is good for you as well in this process. So let me get going here. So there we are, the happy couple. All of you should have gotten an email earlier today urging you to set up your MyCap account. So if you did, great. Hopefully you have that open on another computer or maybe on another tab, because we're going to go in there during the slides, and then you will actually be able to see your situation for your family as we're new with our sample family. I'm sure Matt just posted it in the chat, but if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and click on that link. You can do it really quickly now. If you don't want to, do it later, but just get it all set up. And we'll talk about this again more later.
And just to quickly piggyback on it, like we already got some questions. Is there an income cutoff? What if we're not going to qualify for aid? We're going to hit on some of that specifically, because that's just going to be relevant based on, I have a lot of comfort level with the zip codes that we're speaking to. And so that's just going to be the deal for some of you folks. But one of the things that we were hoping to do as quickly as possible in this process is get rid of some assumptions, because they can be a little bit dangerous. And we hear all the time people say, I'm definitely not going to qualify for aid, or I definitely am going to qualify for aid. We're just let the calculator do the work and tell you right away where you fit on that. And just one more layer is, if we do our jobs tonight, you're going to understand how this process works from a high level, but we also want you to leave here with like, where do you fit on this spectrum? Are you going to qualify for aid? How much, at which colleges, and what's your marching orders moving forward? So that's another motivation here. Sorry.
Yep, exactly. No, you're good. Okay, so let's dive in here. So let's talk about financial aid so that you understand how this whole thing works, because some of it is a little bit counterintuitive and you just don't know what you don't know. So basically, what I will tell you is all these colleges are on sale. All these colleges are discounting. So we know the cost of college, if it's in-state or out-of-state or private, it's been going up for decades, right? And that's what we call the cost of attendance. Been going up, but the colleges are all they're on sale, right? Just like you go to Nordstrom's or you go wherever where there's a sale, right? They're on sale. So how are they discounting their sticker price? They're doing it in one of three ways. The first way is need-based grants. So as the name hints to, if you have financial need, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, a college can award you need-based grants. This is free money from their endowment. If you have need, you can also get state grants and Pell grants, which are federal. So it's not just all from the college endowment, but the best source of these discounts is definitively the college endowments. That's why what we're teaching you tonight is going to be so significant for you to understand how to find these colleges that are going to give you their endowment money, basically. So that's the first bucket, need-based grants based on financial need. The middle bucket is merit-based scholarships. So if you have an EFC that's super high and you have no need, and I'm going to talk about an EFC in a minute, I'm getting a little ahead of myself there. The colleges award merit based on having no idea about your ability to pay. So Bill Gates's kids can get merit-based scholarships, right? Merit-based scholarships, usually based on grades, test scores, could be sports, talents, music, whatever that is. And the third bucket is what we call self-help. So it's loans and work study. So it's a part of a lot of people's college funding strategies, but obviously you have to repay it, or your child has to get a work study job, work, get a paycheck, get a W-2, use some of that money to pay for college. So not bad, but you want to maximize the first two buckets if you can. So how does the need-based aid work? We're going to talk about both pieces here because we have people on this webinar, I'm sure, that fall into both camps. And you can actually have need-based aid at some schools and maybe not others, depending on your family. So as I said, this cost of attendance, this sticker price, is tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel are usually the typical line items, personal expenses. So been going up for decades. So they take that number that they decide every early summer, it comes out for the fall that's coming up, and they subtract something called right now it's called an expected family contribution, EFC. It's about to change, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, to be called the student aid index. It's the same thing, but just different terminology. So I don't want you to be thrown off if you see EFC, but for everybody on here, except we saw one or two 2023 parents that are on here, class of 2023, your reality for this year that you're applying for this fall is EFC, but it's going to switch this fall for the 24-25 school year. So when you submit financial aid forms that we're going to talk about in a minute, that's what gets calculated from those forms. So the colleges say, okay, I cost 80. This family has an EFC SAI of 40. They have $40,000 of need. That doesn't mean they're going to meet all of your needs. Some schools will, some schools won't. They'll what's called gap you. If you have an EFC of 100,000 and the school costs 80, then you have no financial need. And then you're going to be looking at the other bucket for discounts that we're going to talk about in a minute. So the next logical question here is, okay, that's great, Peg, but what's an EFC? What's the SAI? How is it calculated? There's two components to it, two main components. There's assets and there's income. And they look at the student on both of those and the parent or parents. We're going to talk about how it differs in two different methodologies. But on the asset front, what it's including is non-retirement assets. So if you've been a great saver and you've got a big 401k or you've got IRAs, Roth IRAs, 403bs, pensions, anything that's retirement on your statement, your registration of the account, not included in this calculation. Everything else is. So that means checking, savings, CDs, stock, bond portfolio, 529s, college savings accounts are part of that. If the parent is the owner, which is the typical way it's set up, and the student, your child, is the beneficiary, that's an asset of the parents. And that's really important to remember when you're filling out financial aid forms, because that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. And it's logical because you think I'm saving it for my child, so it's my child's asset. It's technically your money per the IRS that you could decide to go to Europe with. You're going to pay some penalties and some taxes, but it isn't gifted to your child. So that's still, you still have control of that money. And that's actually a good thing for financial aid, because parental assets are assessed up to 5.64%, whereas the student assets are 20 or 25%, depending on the school's methodology. You can get a little creative here if your child has an account that's all in their name, and it's like a savings account at your local bank, you can move it over into your name. You still have it earmarked that it's your child's money for whatever they want, but then you can honestly say on the financial aid forms, hey, that's my money. I'm not telling you to do that. Totally depends on your family. If that's going to help you, that might be something you want to do. People ask this question all the time. What about my debt? What about credit card debt, car loans, student loans I'm still paying off? The FAFSA does not ask about that, but that doesn't mean you can't share. In this process down the road, you're going to want to be really open about your financial situation if there's strains or stresses, so that the college understands and maybe they'll help you out more than they are, or maybe they'll help you out if they haven't helped you out. So just keep that in mind. The other piece is the home you live in, your primary home that you live in. The equity in that home, which is the market value minus main mortgage you have, a home equity line of credit that you have, that difference is your equity. And there are some schools, and we're going to get into detail on this in a minute, that will look at that equity as like a liquid asset that, hey, you can tap that to pay us for college. That doesn't mean you have to, but that could be part of calculating your EFC or your SAI. And you want to make sure you don't overvalue your home. You don't want to lie, but you don't want to overvalue it. So there's something called an IRS quick sale rule. As we all know, if you've sold homes, you don't walk away with the whole nut, right? Once you sell it, there's a lot of entities you have to pay. In the state of Washington, we pay sales tax on the sale of our home. So there's all different pieces that you lose. So you can subtract 15, 20% off that. So just keep that in mind. Other real estate, that equity is considered an asset. So the primary home has its own special treatment. So
Peg,
that's the
sorry,
yeah.
a couple questions here. One of them on grandparent 529s or aunt 529s, basically 529s that are held not in the parent's name. What should folks know there?
Yeah, sorry, I usually mention that. So if anybody but the parents is the owner of that 529, anybody who's not on the FAFSA, it's not included. So grandma owns it, if great aunt owns it, your uncle, whatever, not included. It's not, because remember what I said about the IRS, it's actually still that person's asset. So it doesn't need to be included on the form. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the value of your assets is literally game time when you're hitting submit on the form. The market's been a little nutty over the last few months. And I tell people, if you got a big stock portfolio and the market's been down for 3 days, go look at the value and then put it in there and hit submit, right? It's literally, if you want to get that exacting, it's the day you hit submit. So the other piece of the puzzle here is the income. And it's student income and parent income, but students have an allowance. It's a little bit over $7,000 for the upcoming year. So for most kids, it's not a game changer. It doesn't move the needle because most kids don't make more than that. So what that means is they have like my son worked throughout the school year and in the summer. If he made $5,000, it's a wash, right? Because he didn't make over the $7,000. So for most families, student income is not a big deal. On the flip side, parental income is by far the biggest part of the EFC or the SAI. And you're working, you're not going to quit your job to go to college. If you're thinking of retiring, that's a good conversation to have with us because that's a huge planning opportunity. But your income is what it is. Instead of being like right now, like the assets, it's actually a 2-year look back. And we call that prior year. President Obama put this into place. So if you think about when your child is starting, even if they're an upperclassman in college, whatever that year is in the fall, subtract 2, and that's the tax year. So all you class of 2024 parents, when this fall rolls around and you start submitting these forms, it's going to be all about the 2022 tax year. So sophomore parents, and I saw a few in there, you are in what we call the base year. You're in that year. So this is great because you're understanding this now. So you won't create huge capital gains, take a distribution out of a retirement account or something that artificially inflates your income. And then you've got to appeal to the college and ask them to pull it out. So it's really valuable just to understand this piece now. So that's how that works. Very different times that those two components are assessed, basically. So that's need-based aid. So what if you don't qualify? I would venture to guess there's people on here that are thinking, I'm listening to Peg and there's no way I'm going to get need-based aid at the schools we're thinking of. And that could very well be true. Set up your MyCap account and you'll know for sure. But in that case, remember that middle bucket of the slide that I showed you, you're going to be looking at merit scholarships as one of your main sources of a discount from college endowments. So I will turn it over to you, Matt, to chat about that.
Yeah, totally. And then it's somewhat intuitive now. And guys, please, we're getting some great questions, but if you could just gentle reminder, pop those.
Paste them over into the Q&A for us.
Q&A for us. So right, I think most families get the deal by now. Okay, if we're not going to get need-based financial aid or not a meaningful amount, right, we're not going to get much. Let's go find some discounts elsewhere, and probably scholarships is the best place to do that. So we want to identify schools that would fit into that bucket. Good fits for our kid, but they're going to knock a couple bucks off because they want our kid, right? Now, in the old days, we used to do all these presentations in person, right? And when we focus on this part of it, I would know I'd lose like half the audience at least. And I could just see on their faces, my kid's an average student, they're not getting scholarships. And that's a big misnomer here. A lot of these colleges, it's a tactic that's, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years old, something like that. They give a discount to every single kid that's accepted, right? It's just this kind of perception that, hey, if we say we're $70,000, there's going to be this perceived value that people are going to say they must be a really good school. They're $70,000, but nobody actually pays that, right? The kid that's paying the most is paying $55,000 or $50,000 or whatever. The point being is, I don't care what type of student you have. There are opportunities to get merit-based scholarships, I promise you, okay? Obviously, the nuance and kind of the art there is, can we find some of the schools that our kid is also going to be excited to go there? So I just think that's important. We're not just talking to families that have elite or incredibly gifted students here. We're truly talking to everybody. And I'll skip actually to talk to those families that do have those really gifted kids, incredibly intelligent kids, the valedictorians and overachievers and all that. And sometimes there's a challenge there, or maybe a lack of education or information that those families get. And they wind up in trouble because they only apply to colleges that don't provide scholarships. There's about 100 colleges in the country now that scholarships no longer exist there. And I think people are surprised to hear this, right? In our backyard here, right? College capital of the world in the Boston area, there's not one Ivy League school that offers a scholarship. Nobody's walking around Harvard on a scholarship. Nobody's walking around Tufts on a scholarship. Nobody's on Amherst at Amherst College on a scholarship, right? A lot of these more competitive schools, scholarships do not exist for anybody. So again, as families that have a really talented kid, as they're building their list and maybe they're not eligible for need-based aid, but they also feel like they're not ready to start cutting checks for 90 grand a year, which is what these schools cost now, and are going to cost for you guys, at least for the class 2024 and beyond. You just wanted, that's important to know, because again, we've seen too many situations where families didn't hedge their bets and they applied to 8 schools that don't offer scholarships, and then they're stuck from a price point standpoint. Okay. And I've highlighted a couple of these with the Ivy Leagues, et cetera. And again, to skip to the last one, I'll just tease this and we will finish the educational part of tonight, spending just about a minute on it. But what Peg and I are, March is one of the busiest months on our calendar because we have some overlap here, where for you class 2024 and underclassmen folks, you're just getting ready. You're just getting started on this process. And this is when we like to get you started, because as you go to visit schools, April vacation in the summer, hopefully there's this foundation of knowledge, right? And we'll come back in the fall and drill down on it. But for your peers that are in the class 2023 right now, we are in the sweet spot for when they're getting not only accepted to colleges, but getting these financial offers. And we're busy going back to try to push back on these schools and get a couple more bucks. The technical term we use is we're appealing for financial aid. We're negotiating, but we can't use that word. We're appealing for additional financial aid. And a lot of what allows us to be successful is actually at the beginning stages of this process when we apply to competing colleges. And that's especially important if you're not eligible for need-based financial aid, right? And so it's harder to create leverage and a negotiating chip, so to speak. I'll let you guys know I went to Stonehill College, right? For families that I work with now that want to go to Stonehill, I make them apply to Bentley, even if they hate it. I make them apply to Providence, even if they hate it, just as leverage, right? And vice versa. They want to go to Bentley, they hated Stonehill, I'm making them apply to those other schools. So you guys get the deal. That can be a really important part here. But Peggy, if I could, let me dive into the platform quick so we can.
Yeah, and while Matt's doing that, I'll just answer a question that came up about are merit-based scholarships automatically awarded? Most of them are. Most of them is they might have a certain deadline that they want you to apply by. December 1 is a common one. And then you're automatically considered in the top 25% or whatever gets the award. Some colleges do have special ones and they're usually big. They'll be full tuition. They might have an essay. They might have an interview or different things. But most of them you're automatically considered as long as you get your app in at a certain time. And Matt's going to do some stuff here, but he'll show you. We've got a full merit scholarship database in here. And when we get to that, he can show you, we've got information about all the merit scholarships. So you'll be able to see that. Is it competitive? Is it automatic? That sort of thing. But that's a great question.
Yeah, no, it's a good call. And so for those of you that set up your account, you're already in here and this is what you're staring at in your home dashboard. For those of you that haven't, we ask you to answer a couple questions, right? Who's in the family? What's the zip code? What type of student are we working with? What's the high level financial profile of the family? And then boom, here you go. And you're going to have these EFCs, soon to be SAIs, staring you in the face. And so it's not to overwhelm you and confuse you. And obviously there's a bazillion different acronyms, right, in this process. But there's actually a couple different EFCs that colleges can use, right? And most colleges use this federal EFC, and colleges that only require the FAFSA, which we'll hit on in a little bit, but just about all the state and public universities use this EFC. Whereas a lot of the private colleges, a lot of the kind of name brand, right, our Amhersts, our BUs, our NYUs use this institutional methodology. And for this particular family, obviously there's a huge discrepancy, right? The reason being, among other things, but the big differences here is, number one, this is a 2-household family. So this is a divorced family, right? And the big difference is that the federal EFC only looks at one household. And we'll talk about that specifically in a bit here. But the federal EFC only looks at one household and 2-household families, just their income and resources, et cetera. Whereas most of these institutional EFCs, the BUs and NYUs and Amhersts of the world, they're going to look at both households' income and assets and consider both of those when assessing their need-based financial aid eligibility. So that's a couple of reasons why there's this huge jump here. The other one is, and again, this is not uncommon that we'll see the institutional EFC be higher, is that these are the schools that are looking at home equity in most cases to varying degrees, right? And we have schools like Boston College that look at all of it, right? But then we have institutional EFC schools like Amherst that look at none of it, right? Or a very small percentage of it. It's capped. I'm telling you more than you need to know, right? It's all baked in here in terms of these schools' particular methodology. I want you to focus less on the specific X's and O's we're talking about here. I just want you to focus on the net prices, right? This is like having a net price calculator all in one place. In the big takeaways here, especially as we're just getting started for most families, is that in many cases, the sticker price can be completely deceiving, right? And especially if you're cost conscious, which most people that show up to these events are to at least some extent, intuitively you're going, I'm not going to let my kid apply or tour or look at these colleges that are $83,000, $85,000, $90,000, right? You're just looking at state schools. But this is not uncommon at all, where the state schools are actually more expensive or about the same price as the private institutions, right? Because it's based on the EFC, based on the student, and based on how the colleges do business, right? Cost of attendance, EFC, need, and the student's merit, all baked into this. But that all comes, the takeaway there is, again, do not make your list of colleges based on the sticker price. You want it more focused on what's your net cost. Are you going to get discounts? How much, etc. So let's actually, this is a good, throw out a couple colleges, guys, that you are thinking about touring, or you class 2023 families that you're going to. And by the way, Peggy, let's make sure, at least for the class 2023 families, I'll quickly show them how to upload the awards and get the appeal analysis.
Sure, we can do that real quick.
But yeah, throw out some colleges, throw them out in the chat, and let's take a look at a few. Okay, let's actually pick on Providence here. And so here was one, Providence College. Okay, so we're getting a meaningful discount there. This family's going to get $30,000 off. And if we want to drill down, get a little more context as to the why, I can click into any college and it's going to tell us, are we getting grants? Are we getting scholarships? Why are we getting down to this? Why aren't we paying full sticker price? This is actually a decent example, because in some cases, we're going to be eligible for financial aid and scholarships, but it's very rare that colleges will what's called stack financial aid, give you grants plus the scholarships, which would obviously be a phenomenal discount here. They'll give you the higher of the two numbers, okay, to bring you down to your net cost.
Yeah, because just remember, the merit aid, even though it's not given out for need, those dollars can still meet need because they're all coming from the same bucket, in essence.
Exactly. And Peg mentioned this, but for every college in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're really good at being able to tell you how much is your kid going to get based on how that school does business and, you know, what type of student you have. And again, if you want some more context, if it's helpful for you and your brain to get some more of the why, you can click on the admissions tab to get a bunch of information. But what's relevant here in terms of what we're talking about is, what's their average GPA at this school? What are their average test scores? Are they test optional? Where does my kid fit within that? It usually helps, gives you some context. Another thing that we'll look at, again, for you class 2023 families this time of year, this financial aid tab is, I refer to it as basically the college's business model. What type of methodology do they use? Are they going to be looking at my home equity? Are they going to be looking at both households if we're divorced or separated? How many families typically get a scholarship here? How generous or not are they with financial aid? Again, that's all baked into the projections here. But what we'll lean on sometimes this year is we'll see what they give out for an average scholarship. In this case at Providence, it's about 20 grand. Because if we got less than that, if we got 15, that in and of itself could be enough that we could push back and take a closer look at. So I'll do two more quick ones. Let's look at what did I just see? It's a popular one up here actually, but the College of Charleston, this might be a good one. My guess is we're probably not going to get any need-based aid. Maybe we get a little merit. But okay, so let's go take a look. Fairly expensive school at $54,000. We're going to get a merit scholarship here, but no need-based financial aid. They're just not generous with need-based financial aid. And we're going to get a couple bucks from a scholarship, but we're still paying some pretty big dough to go here. Whereas if we look at, again, probably an extreme example, Harvard, right? You guys see what we're looking at here. $82,000 school, we're going to go there for 14 now. Challenge is you got to get in. That's the tricky part if you get in.
And you got to have need because
if
you're a high flying student, which you probably are, if you got in, you're not going to get a merit scholarship like Matt's already explained.
Exactly. So hopefully that's helpful to talk a little bit about the why and how schools discount or don't in different ways. But I hope helps you avoid some of the counterintuitiveness of this process. And maybe, Peggy, I think we're in decent shape here where you can spend just a minute talking about this part of it, because I know that you love to, and then I'll skip down and quickly.
Yeah, just real quick. So after you've gotten these net cost projections, you want to remember this is a 4-year expense and hopefully only 4 years. So we really go the next step with you and say, okay, let's take the 1-year net cost. Let's multiply it by 4, which is what if we look like at BU, it's 103,519. That's with an inflation factor thrown in there. And then when you go in here, we're going to ask you how much you can afford for college. And if you're not sure, don't stress about it. It's a good thing because you're going to start thinking about it. And that's what your budget is, the number right below the 4-year net cost. So then that comes off and look at that at BU. Wow. The cost is 103, but you've got 119 to bring to the table. That's looking great, right? That's an ideal situation.
Peggy, let me jump in here real quick, and I'll spend another minute elaborating on this in a second, but we got some questions around siblings and 2 in school at once.
Sure.
You might be looking at this and going, these guys aren't very good at math because the 1-year net cost at BU is 30,000. Then Peg told me there's going to be inflation and you times it by 4 and something's not adding up here. This particular family has a student that's 2 years behind. And when you have the 2 kids in school at once, you're going to be eligible for more need-based financial aid at BU. It used to be that you would be eligible for more financial aid everywhere. I'm going to spend some time talking about that for you, class 2024. It's the first year that the federal government and federal methodology schools are getting rid of the sibling discount at all of those colleges. But the private institutions, although all of them haven't made a decision, most of them are going to keep the sibling discount, which is why it's reflected.
Yeah, and when you look at Penn State, the math lines up because Penn State is one of the schools that, following that methodology and the law that's getting passed, you're not going to get any credit. So that's a planning opportunity for all you families that have twins, and probably a bunch of you have 2 kids close in age in different grades. Yeah. So basically you want to take this next step and look at it this way. And you look at NYU, you're looking at 8,000 is the difference in loans. That's pretty nice. That's not a bad deal. And then we even go the extra step and tell you Penn State versus NYU, if you take out these loans at an assumed interest rate over 10 years, you're going to be paying almost $1,400 a month. And your estimated take-home pay is $2,850. So you don't have to be an accountant or a financial person to know those numbers don't line up. That's half of your child's take-home pay. So that's why we have caution up here. So it doesn't mean Penn State has to be thrown out. You don't want to have a list of schools that are not affordable. And then you want to have a discussion as a family. Are you going to change lifestyle? What are you going to do to not have that amount of loans? Because that's just really not prudent. So I just want to push the planner in me to keep going down this left side. It's very intentional how we built the software. That's the next step after you understand your family. Then you look at it in a 4-year view.
Yeah, and I think what we're trying to do with these early stages, when it's just like this balancing act that we have to do, is to not give you too much information and overwhelm you, and also provide this foundation of education. But it's also a mindset, right? I think a lot of people get into a lot of trouble, and the colleges just have all the power in this process, and they're so good at it, where they get you to buy first before you know what you're actually going to pay, and before you start thinking about a budget. It's like completely different from any other major investment we make. And we want you to take that mindset and do it with college too, right? Know, what is this school going to cost me? Not just year one, but over 4 years. How much do we think we can come up with before we have to start borrowing? Excuse me. Thank you. And if we do have to borrow, what's a reasonable amount, and what is that actually going to look like? And specifically for students, they don't know what it means to borrow 8,000 versus 124,000 versus 170. So we've broken it down into these monthly payments, and we found that even teenagers can somewhat, I don't want to give them too much credit, but somewhat kind of wrap their minds around having a monthly payment of $2,000 when I'm 22 years old. That sounds hard. Right. So just really quickly, what I just want to show you for you class 2023 families, right? If you haven't done this already, upload your financial aid award letters in the translate and compare section, right? What we can allow you to do is, again, if we're accepted into Boston University or whatever school it happens to be, upload that award. The first thing that, and again, we're getting ahead of ourselves for you underclassmen, but this part of the process is confusing because these financial aid award letters, essentially the offers, and sometimes this takes a minute when I'm sharing my screen, but it's confusing. You don't even know what's free money, what's need-based financial aid, what's a scholarship, what am I going to have to pay back? Basically, what the hell does a school cost me? It's easier said than done in terms of figuring that out. So we have the platform take that guesswork out of it for you and just have it be in a really digestible way, number one, so you can compare apples to apples. But more importantly, we want to tell you, did you get a good deal? So we know that this family got under awarded, and based on how BU typically does business and based on their family considerations, specifically that there's a 2-household family, we have a very strong case to appeal for more financial aid. And starting out with the highlight here that we got $15,000 less than we would expect, right? And then there's some other reasons here. But anyways, that is something that we want to make sure you take advantage of. Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves for you underclassmen, but for the 2023 folks, upload your award and have us gut check it, whether or not you got a good deal, and if you guys should think about pushing back for some more.
Yeah, and somebody asked a good question. Again, reminder, guys, put your questions in the Q&A about, can we count on the same discounts year after year? That's the wonderful thing about merit aid, is almost always it's offered for 4 years as long as the student maintains a certain GPA. Need-based aid, on the other hand, is assessed every year. So if you get a promotion, you win the lottery, you're going to lose some of your need-based aid, if not all of it. So that's how that works. Okay, couple extra slides. You guys are getting these slides, a little bit more information about merit aid, so you'll have that to review. So now let's talk about the nuts and bolts coming up. And we just found out something last night, and I actually didn't update the slides, so I will tell you, I forgot, it just dawned on me. There's a one-off change for this fall, but basically there are a couple financial aid forms that all the schools will require the FAFSA, almost every school in the country. Then there's another form that Matt's going to touch on that 200 to 300, mostly private schools, you will submit along with the FAFSA, not in lieu of the FAFSA. So both of us categorically agree that you should submit the FAFSA. And we could talk about this for 10 minutes, but one of the reasons is some schools require it for merit aid. So if you're a merit aid family to get your discount and it happens to be one of those schools and you didn't know, you could be leaving money on the table. That's one of several reasons to submit the FAFSA. So definitely submit the FAFSA, and most families should probably be submitting the CS profile. There's a few cases where I might agree that, hey, maybe you don't need to, but there's some legwork you need to do. Deadlines for these forms, just like applying for admission, are important, and they don't match the admission deadlines. There's different ways to apply for admission: early decision, early action, regular admission. They will have corresponding financial aid form deadlines. So be on top of those deadlines. It's not the college's job to keep your kids on top of that, right? They need to learn how to do this anyways. They're going to be on their own soon. And if you miss a deadline, that gives the college the opportunity to say, hey, you're in the second bucket. You might not get as much need-based aid. So you don't want to leave money on the table. So definitely stay on top of that. Get your kid in gear there to watch that. Okay. So first form, we mentioned it a few times already, the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. Most schools use this to give out their institutional aid, which is their endowment money. And then it's also used for state aid, and then of course, federal aid. It says up here, accessible on October 1st each year. Last night, they came out and said, this coming fall only, it's going to go live December 1st. So I will make sure that I change that. So when you guys get your deck tomorrow, it'll reflect the right date. This is because the FAFSA Simplification Act was passed. Matt's going to touch on this at the end, and he already mentioned the sibling discount that's most likely going to go away. So just keep that in mind. This literally was announced last night. So we don't know how this is all going to play out. As we know, we will be doing webinars and keeping all of you guys in the CAP community informed. As we mentioned, everything will be about the 2022 tax year, which is the prior.
Peggy, you're a little choppy on us, pal.
Yeah.
I think you're back.
Okay, am I back?
You're back, but you're choppy. But I think
I talk about the custodial parent definition.
Yeah. So here's because this is an important piece here, right? And this is a huge change for this year. Now, again, it doesn't really matter for those of you guys that are doing this for the first time, because this is the deal and it's all. But for two household families, divorced or separated families, like I mentioned at the top, only one household completes the FAFSA. Okay. Now, what the Department of Education wants families to do is have the household that provides the most financial support be the household that completes the FAFSA. Okay, now, in our opinion, this is a way more gray. There's much more gray area here than the current rule, which is the custodial parent. Who does the kid live with the most, right? Fairly simple, right? Over the course of the year, who does the kid live with the most? Now, it's who provides the most financial support. The way that, or the reason why we think this is going to cause a lot more confusion, and I'm confident about this, is because I think it's a gray area. I've had dozens of conversations with families that fit into this bucket since then. And I ask, well, who provides most financial support? And most of them, this one pays child support of X amount a month, but the kid lives with me and I pay for the mortgage and I pay for the clubs and I'm the one that says, here's $20 for whatever. And geez, it's probably pretty close. And that's how much. Sometimes maybe it's very cut and dry and obvious, but in most cases, I think falls somewhere in that hypothetical that I just outlined. And the strategy here, the opportunity here, is that you want to find a way to have the parent that provides the most financial support be the one with the least income, the least assets, the one that's going to give you the lowest EFC/SAI. So be creative here. Okay, there's an opportunity to be creative and be smart and be strategic here, right? Nobody's telling you to not be honest, but you have some control over this, right? And it's important to note, it's not the parent with the higher income, it's not the parent with more assets, it's the one that provides the most financial support. I'll take it one more step because we get this question right after. What are colleges doing to verify this? And again, this is somewhat anecdotal, so this is not prescriptive, but I've spoken with dozens of financial aid counselors. We have a lot of me and Peggy's teammates, like we have the director of financial aid at Harvard on our team, MIT, director of financial aid at MIT, director of financial aid at Denison, director of scholarships, which is what they call it at the University of Oklahoma. So we have a lot of intel in terms of what's happening on that side of the fence every day. And the short answer here is they're not going to be able to verify this, right? Because it's next to impossible. So they're not going to try. So basically what people present is what they're going to take at face value. That's the short kind of summary of feedback that, again, is somewhat anecdotal that we have as of today. For these types of families, if they're smart, should be able to use it to their advantage ultimately. So Peggy, you can probably go to the next slide here. Buddy.
Yeah, and again, people are asking about how the timeline's going to work with this. We don't know, guys. We will keep you informed. Don't stress about it. Everybody's going to have the same questions. The colleges are going to have to figure this out. It's just a little bit of a to be determined, basically, right now. And then here's a slide. We are going to get in the weeds on these financial aid forms in the fall, like line by line. I'll shoot how-tos on it, but you can take this slide, review it at your leisure, but we're not going to get into it now. It's just too much to bombard you with right now. You want me to take this one since you bailed me out?
Yeah, you bet. So Peggy teased it, right? The CS profile is the financial aid application that a lot of these colleges require, about 200 in addition to the FAFSA. It, generally speaking, just about all of these use some variation in the institutional methodology. So they're the ones that a lot of them are looking at home equity to some extent. They're the ones that are usually looking at both households if it's a 2-household family. And I think this is the one, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of your peers for your 2023 families. You're living it, breathing it, or towards the finish line of going through this process. It's not a pleasant process. Peggy said at the top, it doesn't have to be stressful or as stressful. And I think it's true, right? If you follow our lead here throughout this process and stay educated and ahead of the curve, but some of it's inevitable. It's your kids and your money, and there's a lot of information out there. I think this is the form that gives people nightmares. I think the FAFSA has done a good job of becoming more user-friendly. It's going to get even more user-friendly, supposedly, but this one is the one that gives people fits, right? Our teammate, Bill Rabbit, one of my best friends, he likes to say that you can easily get through the FAFSA with a glass of wine or two, right? You're going to need at least the whole bottle for the CS profile. And I think that's pretty fair mentality or a mindset going into this thing. This is the one that, again, it's long. You do have to fill them out every year is a question we got here. You got to go through this process every year. And there's some nuanced questions in the CSS profile. How much can you afford to pay each year for college? They want you to unpack your business if you're a business owner. If you're a property owner, own your own home, they want more answers there. Again, they make you earn it here. It's just something we got to trudge through. Again, like Peg said, we're going to be back in the fall to get super granular here, line by line. Plus, you guys will have the opportunity to have you do these forms while we're there with you, guiding you through it, and not just the mechanics of the line by line, but the strategy along with it. So you can go ahead, Peggy. And again, we'll include in the slide deck the top 7 common mistakes for the FAFSA and the CS profile, but I'm not going to spend time on it right now. And we already talked about, obviously, some of these huge FAFSA changes, of which you 2024 families are the guinea pigs. It's not all bad. I have some massive problems with some of the changes, but it's not all bad. We'll start with the good here. I just mentioned it, but the form itself should get a lot easier. We're going from about 100 questions to about 35 questions. That matters, especially because of this kind of a heartbreaking statistic, is the fact that previously about 2/3 of low-income families started the FAFSA and didn't get through it, right? Meaning their kids got no financial aid or they didn't go to college. So they either overpaid or didn't go at all, largely due to the fact that they couldn't get through the FAFSA, just too complex and overwhelming, and a language barrier, and obviously a lot of first generation families. I think that's huge, especially for those folks. And for the families that need the most help, they're getting more help. Okay, so the Pell Grant's increasing. It's still not a huge number, but again, for families, the low-income families are getting more resources, more help. I think universally, we're in agreement that those are great things. We have this new divorced, separated 2-household rule as a con, just because I think it's going to be more confusing. I'm tempted to move it to the pro section now. I've wavered here because I think it's going to create more opportunity for consumers, which is always what we're trying to do. But this next one, I know in my guts, is a terrible change. And again, that's getting rid of the sibling discount, where now the schools that use the federal methodology, the Department of Education is saying no discount for families that have more than one kid in school at once. So right now, if your family has a $20,000 EFC, but then next year your younger sibling is also in college, so you're overlapping, same income, same resources. And how it works right now is they'll say your EFC is still 20,000, but we're going to divide it equally between each kid, and they each have an EFC of 10,000. That's going away. So effectively, the cost of college for a lot of families and a lot of colleges is going to double if we have more than one kid in school at once. So it's ridiculous, right? So if you go to this, and if you can share the link, Peggy, and go to the next screen. We're trying to do something about it. We've started a petition. We've got, I think, 66,000 signatures or something like that. We're doing everything we can to prevent this from going through, but basically the feedback we're getting is until you have 100,000 signatures, you're not going to get it in front of important decision makers, right? It's not getting in front of the guys on and gals on Capitol Hill until you've got 100,000 signatures. We've got 66,000. We're about 2/3 of the way there, literally just like this. Grassroots, anybody we get in front of, we number one, let them know about this rule. I think the vast majority of folks agree that it's not a good one. Even if it doesn't affect you, I promise it affects some of your buddies, your neighbors, etc., family, friends. Please sign it. Takes 30 seconds. Please share it. Even better if you're able, because again,
Just put it in the chat. So the link is in the chat.
and now, Peggy, we got 2 more months to try to make an impact here, right?
I know that's
The
that's a positive of the date.
That is a positive, right? So the new FAFSA being pushed back 2 more months, we're still trying to wrap our arms around, is that a good thing, bad thing, and what the trickle down effect is. But this could be potentially a good one where maybe we can make some more noise.
Yep. So definitely go in there and do that. As Matt said, it only takes a second. Okay,
Yeah.
you got 1 minute on this slide, buddy.
That's it, sister. That's it. Now, Peggy, listen, and you guys saw she's a little bit scary. You don't want to cross Peggy. The big takeaway here is that you don't have to accept the first offer that you get from these colleges, and you want to apply to competing colleges. That's what I want to burn in your brains now. The X's and O's of how we do it, you will learn about a year from now. You class of 23 families. Unfortunately, we can't spend too much time on it tonight, but reach out to us. We've been doing this and we'll continue to do this for the next couple of weeks. And we spend a whole presentation just on this part.
Yeah, and somebody already asked me, we are known to give discounts all the time. So if you reach out to us, we can probably give you a discount. So keep that in mind.
It's true.
All right.
How'd I do, buddy? On the
A+ on that. A+.
Thank you. Okay, so next steps here is in our recommendation, right? And of course, we'll take your questions and make sure we get to those. But next steps, we say this all the time, and Peg and I take this pretty seriously. In terms of our goal is we've only done a good presentation if you guys continue to stay engaged with us in some capacity. Pay attention to our webinars, look at what we send, our newsletters, whatever. We consider ourselves as like the shepherds here, and we just want you following our lead, and it maximizes your odds of having a successful outcome. However, and I'll give you kind of your options in a second, whatever that looks like for you, that's how you want to do it. You have the opportunity. And for those of you that have followed us before, you know this, we only do this at a couple of our high school partners, is offer a free intro call with somebody on our team, usually to get anybody on the phone. That's part of our one-on-one, is part of our paid services. With a select amount of our high school partners, we offer a free intro call where you can share a little bit more about your information, and we can tell you a little bit more about how or if we can help you moving forward. Take advantage of that. So Peggy, you can put the link in the chat. I would book it now because we'll only offer it for another couple of days. So if you want to put that link in the chat and give those,
I'm putting it in now, and it's also embedded. So when you get your slide deck, it'll be in there. But there it is in the chat there. Perfect. And so again, to just like further highlight our next steps. Was this a new feature, Peggy? It's making me dizzy. We broadly bucket people in 3 different categories, right? Obviously, I'm overgeneralizing, and hopefully that's not offensive. But in our experience, we can put people in 3 different places. One, we have our DIYers, right? And those are, you know who you are, and we just try to give you as many free resources as possible. And go crazy, right? You have our platform, the software. Every other Monday, one of us, it's usually a combination of us, just have open office hours, right? 7 Eastern time, come bring your questions, bring your case studies, right? Have direct access to us. We have an interactive Facebook group. It's a community of you all, moderated by our experts, right? And we're pretty proud of our YouTube channel that I think type anything in there, and I guarantee you we have a tutorial on how to do it when it comes to this process. And if we don't, and I challenge this, and it's helped make this channel better, write into us and say, hey, I typed this in there and you guys didn't have any answers for it, right? And I know Peg's putting this, if she hasn't already, link in the chat as well. So you have, I'm looking for it, actually.
Oh, you know what, Peggy? I can grab it. I'll grab it right now.
Yeah, sorry, I have the last
I mean,
name.
Peg, first you don't have the date on the FAFSA change, and now you don't have the.
And this is coming from somebody who puts up slides all the time with mistakes. I know. I'm
Talk
feeling
after
it
this.
tonight.
We'll talk after this. And then we have, I think, folks that are DIYer, but they want somebody looking over their shoulder at least a little bit, right? Of, am I doing this right? I don't need too much help, but let me just bend your ear for an hour, or just give me all the tools in the world and full access to the software. So that's our for anybody that sounds like it could apply to you. I think we've got that addressed. And then for the folks that we have an offering that's called Wake Me When It's Over, are just folks that I describe as, or fall into a couple of categories. Like, number one is just, I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't want to screw this up. Somebody take the wheel, right? And just, I want to work with somebody one-on-one through this whole time to drag me through this process. We have a little bit of a complicated situation, right? We're business owners. We're two household family, and maybe it's not the most amicable deal, or even if it is, we want a middle person, right? A middleman to be the point of contact here. Or it's just, again, I don't think I'm going to qualify for any aid, but I do not want to pay $85,000 a year for college. There's got to be a way to navigate this thing. These are a couple of kind of types of folks I'd say you might consider this type of service, which, again, you work with somebody one-on-one through the whole time. We help build your list of schools. We do all the financial aid applications for you, FAFSA, CSS profile. We're on the front lines for the appeal process. We're helping you figure out how to pay for it. If you got to borrow, what loan should you take, right? For class 2023 families, this is not going to be a relevant service. It's just kind of like too much of the ship has sailed. You might consider booking an hour so we can help you with your appeal process, but this investment wouldn't make sense. Obviously, this is a bigger investment and more deliverables in a longer time period that you're working with us. So it's something that you can sign up through the link, or if you just want to ask some more specific questions, take advantage of that free intro call with somebody on our team, and we can help point you in, if you're not sure, probably the direction of what bucket that you might fit into. And there is a little bit in terms of a sense of urgency here, right? For these first two, they're not going anywhere, and we're not going anywhere. We'll continue to do our thing on a daily basis. And we got a whole team of experts that anytime you want to meet with somebody for an hour, that's not going anywhere. In terms of these Wake Me When It's Over packages, we do just have some bandwidth limitations there, and our rosters are approaching getting full here. They'll fill up in the next couple of weeks, I would think. So again, if that's something you want to do, you would want to consider doing your due diligence or signing up on the earlier side. But if that's not you, again, we'll continue to lead the charge here. And again, like we said here, if Peggy and I did our job, you're just going to continue to engage in some capacity in whatever way makes the most sense for you all. So
Yeah, that's really the message here. Like, in one of those three ways, just stay engaged. Trust me, parent to parent, you will be very happy you did. Like I said at the beginning, the more informed you are, the better off you are when you go on college visits. You'll know what questions to ask admissions, what to ask financial aid. You'll be able to cut through some of the marketing and really nail what it means for your family. It's just like when you go to a car lot, right? You do some research about what car you might want before you go to the lot. You understand some stuff. This is a way bigger purchase than most cars. Not every car, right? But the cars that I buy, much better purchase. So bigger, not better, bigger.
yeah.
So just definitely keep the ball. I know it's hard. You have a lot going on. Everybody's super busy, but honestly, we're here. Like, we know your pain points. We know the journey you're on. That's why we show up with these webinars, and we're going to continue to do it next year. We'll have the line by line. We'll have, what about private scholarships? How do you appeal? We'll just take you through this, and we'll keep you informed on the changes with the FAFSA as well. As we know, we will keep you informed, because it's about as brand spanking new as it could be. It's not even 24 hours old, the announcement.
Yep. We're all over it, guys. All right, Peggy. I think that's it, pal. My Massachusetts folks, as you can, it's probably a little darker there. I'm out on the West Coast at the moment. So I'll be, and I'm down here in LA and we're getting, apparently it's warmer weather back home. So I don't know what's up with that. So
Oh, that's a bummer.
we got to turn the tide tomorrow. Supposedly the sun's coming out tomorrow. We're getting a little sneak peek here. It'll be warmer tomorrow. So we'll see. But thank you, Peggy, my dearest. We will
All right.
talk to you tomorrow. Good night, everybody. And like we said, you'll get the recording tomorrow. You'll get the slide deck tomorrow. Great questions as always. And we hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, everybody have a great night.